first time, and you can see how it's making a little bit of a spiral there. Then a chunk broke off the comet and actually started to form its own tail for a short while and then dissipated. This is an image by Eleanor Helene on Palomar. She ran a program called NEAT. It was a near-Earth asteroid tracking program, and it tracked near-Earth asteroids. This is false colored to see the gas and dust distribution in the comet. This was taken by 16 and 18-year-old high school students in Sonnenberg, Denmark on November 8th, 1996. This is 1 year after discovery, still not very developed. This was taken by David Hannon, an amateur in Ringgold, Georgia on July 1996. January 16th, 1997, Nick James in England imaged the comet, and you can see very pronounced jets. This was an image by Gordon Gerard, also a false colored image in New South Wales, Australia, but quite spectacular jet structure at the time. The nucleus had a rotation period of 11 hours and 18 minutes. As the nucleus tumbled around, another axis once every 19 days. The rapid rotation axis was pointed roughly toward Earth for several months around perihelion. Because the Earth is moving in its orbit during this time, this means that the rotation pole of the comet must be moving. Not only that, but it's moving at a very fast rate of about 2 degrees per day. As I said before, the emission velocity of the dust is about 67,000 miles an hour. This is a much higher velocity than is typical in comets. Bopp is not a typical comet. It was producing a very large amount of gas, about 3,000 tons of carbon monoxide a second. This is Hale-Bopp in the North American Nebula. This was an image taken by Jerry Rodriguez. What I really like is the fact that some amazing pictures were taken by amateurs. This is the open cluster M39 that's just at the end of the comet's tail. And of course, the North American Nebula and the Pelican Nebula. Sit off to the right here, the Pelican and the North American. This was taken March 8, 1997 by Herman Makus of the Cerny Brie Observatory in Slovenia. Tremendously developed ion tail. The streaking, I just think, is absolutely amazing. This image is called Sharing the Light. This is Jerry Rodriguez and his two boys looking at the Hale-Bopp comet. I like it because it kind of gives you an idea of the scale of the comet seen from Earth in the sky, naked eye from a very dark location. Of course, you don't see quite the ion tail like that. This was an image taken in Arches National Park, Utah on March 30th by Dewey Vanderhoff. What I like about this image is the light on the ground below the bridge is light from the comet, reflected light from the comet. The comet was that bright. This is Comet Hale-Bopp on March 8, 1997, an image taken by astrophotographers Bill and Sally Fletcher. It's the same images that I am going to have for sale after the presentation. This is an image taken in March of '97 at Joshua Tree National Monument in California, taken by Wally Paholka. This was Time Magazine Photo of the Year. On April 16, 1997, it was discovered that Hale-Bopp had a third type of a tail. This is composed of sodium ions. They're neutral atoms. The unique tail was discovered with a 50-millimeter instrument. On the 16th of April, members of the European Comet Hale-Bopp team made several exposures of the comet through a narrowband filter that isolates emission to sodium atoms, and to their great surprise, they found the atoms were distributed over an enormous region. The sodium tail was about 330,000 miles in diameter and 60 million miles long. I like this image. This is a picture of the comet taken with the eclipse in Mongolia on March 9, 1997. This was taken April the 8th, 1997 by Bill and Sally Fletcher. This is an interesting image. This was taken by Marco Polo Pavese at Genoa, Italy on April 7th. I don't know if the photographer set the fire for the Great Fork. You can see how the gas and dust fire discolored the comet. This also was taken over a lake in northern Italy in the Dolomite Mountains. The light in the picture is moonlight. This is Hale Bopp over the Golden Gate Bridge by Low-Kun Town. They launched a scientific mission with the shuttle to study Hale Bopp. This was called the Swiss Hale Bopp Imaging Mission on STS-85. The primary objective was to obtain image sequences to study coma and tail morphology in response to solar wind conditions during the scientifically interesting classical turn-off phase as the comet moves outward beyond its 2 AU. It obtained more than 400,000 useful images over a 9-day period. This is mission specialist Steve Robinson with the instrument that they used to obtain all those images. Water ice in the comet comprises about 4% of the weight of the entire comet. Comet Hale Bopp's nucleus contained about 17 trillion tons of water ice, or about 25 times the amount of water in all the Great Lakes combined. This is Hale Bopp in 1997, taken from Veeple Ranch, where I discovered the comet at. One of my friends took this picture. He said, "You don't have any pictures of the comet from the location where you discovered it." This is an image of Hale Bopp over Stonehenge. It was taken by the UK astronomer Philip Perkins. Very nice image. This is me saying goodbye to Comet Hale Bopp. I was sorry to see it go, but glad that hundreds of millions of people around the world got to see it. According to a survey published in Sky and Telescope, an astounding 81% of all Americans at the time saw the comet with their own eyes. It was conducted by Maricopa Research and Sky and Telescope magazine. Don't hold your breath, but the comet will return in the year 4385 on Christmas Day. After perihelion, the comet had a sunward spike. This image is in black and white, so you can see the development of it. It's actually an optical illusion, where as the comet's receding, of course, the tail always points away from the sun, so our viewing angle is such that you're actually looking at part of the tail. This sunward spike down here at the bottom is actually part of the tail. It would be fan-shaped out behind it like that, so it looks like it's something going towards the sun, but it's not really. They wondered if there was any historical images of the comet, and archaeoastronomers and others searched records to find out if there was any indication of it. Finally, one archaeoastronomer remembered the Stela of Naram Sin. This was carved by the Akkadians in 2214 BC during Naram Sin's reign. The stela, which commemorates his victory over Setuni, a king of the Lulubi, a mountain people whom he conquered. The triumphant sovereign, shown taller than any of the other men in the traditional manner, leads his army in the attack on the mountain. If you notice the two objects with rays, those people always represented the moon as a crescent. Here you have two objects with rays, so it had puzzled people for many years what was it actually representing. If you look at this man over here, this is cuneiform. It's a prayer going up to heaven. I don't know whether they were praying that that object wasn't going to come down and kill them or what, but those two events occurred, the attack, and they believe this is the first record of the comet, because when they calculated the orbit of the comet, it would have been sitting right alongside the sun in approximately that position, and probably 30 times brighter than the moon. So it would have been a terrifying sight, I would imagine. This is taken June of 1999. The comet was 2 years out on its outward passage. This was taken in 2001 at 2 billion kilometers by Hubble. It has a jet still measuring over 1 million kilometers in length. This is a close-up of it. In 2003, on February 7th, the comet was 7.1 AU away, just about the same distance that it was when I discovered it. And that's approximately what it looked like to the naked eye the night that I discovered it, just a faint fuzzy dot. The previous record was set for longevity of observations by the Great Comet of 1811, which was visible to the naked eye for about 9 months. Hale-Bopp was visible for 569 days, or about 18 and a half months. Comet continues to fade as it recedes, but still being tracked by astronomers. In 2007, 11 years after the perihelion and at a distance of 25.7 AU, is still highly active as indicated by the detection of a CO2-driven coma. They expect that the comet will remain observable with large telescopes until the year 2020, at which time it will be about 30th magnitude, or 4 billion times fainter than what can be seen with the naked eye. At that time, it will be too difficult to distinguish the comet from the large numbers of distant galaxies of similar brightnesses. This is a Japanese astronomer, Mitsunori Tsumura. He imaged comet Hale-Bopp from a wadi farm in Western Australia with a homemade 8-inch telescope. One of my favorite questions during my presentations occurred at Arizona State University when an 8-year-old boy stood up and said, "Excuse me, Dr. Bopp, could you tell me, do Kreuzian comets have other gravitational influences on them besides Jupiter, or are they naturally inclined to crash into the sun on their own?" We have a phone company called Sprint, and they use pin dropping to show how their sound is perfect. I said you could have done the world's greatest Sprint commercial in that place, because you could have heard a pin drop. I don't know whether they're waiting to see if I could answer his question, or if they were as dumbfounded as I was at that coming out of the mouth of an 8-year-old. I signed autographs for a while afterwards, and he came up with his mother, and I said, "Son, what's your name?" And he said, "John." I said, "John, let me tell you, that's one of the best questions I've ever received." That little boy grinned from ear to ear. I said, "I now believe in levitation," because he floated off to tell one of his friends that he got my autograph, and his mother was still standing there. And I said to her, I said, "Is he always like that?" She goes, "Yeah." She went straight up to her face like that. I started cracking up. That's the kind of stuff that makes it worthwhile to speak to children. Well, this comet was also discovered by another gentleman, Alan Hale. He was observing 2 other comets in the sky that night, Comet Clark and Comet d'Arrest. This is Comet Clark. It was discovered June 9th, 1973 by Michael Clark in New Zealand on a photographic plate at magnitude 13. This is Comet d'Arrest. It's a periodic comet discovered by Heinrich Ludwig d'Arrest on June 28, 1851, and it has a 6.5-year period. Well, Alan had to wait. He had made his first observation, and he had wait about an hour for the second comet to come above the horizon to take magnitude measurement of. He does magnitude measurements on comets as part of his hobby and reports them to the Central Bureau for their statistics. So he basically he was observing in his driveway in Cloudcroft, New Mexico, about 400 miles to the east of me, and spun his telescope around, and it stopped right on Hale-Bopp. So he walked in the house and emailed a message to the Central Bureau, and they assumed that because he had reported it first, that he discovered it first. However, when they checked the records on the timing, I actually discovered it 17 minutes before he did. But I had to drive my little experience 95 miles home and have all that trouble getting it reported. I still got the better end of the deal, though, because when I came and spoke at Trinity in Dublin, they had made up a sign about 40 feet long, and they spelled it, instead of it being spelled H-A-L-E, like his name really is spelled, they spelled it H-I-L, H-A-I-L. So I'm about 40 newspaper headlines from around the world where they spell it that way. Alan doesn't like that word. This is Comet Encke. It has the shortest orbital period of any comet. It comes back every 3.3. It comes back every 3.3 years. This is my final slide, and the image of Comet Hale-Bopp. This was taken over Mono Lake in California by astrophotographers Tony and Daphne Hallis. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you for your kind attention, and I'll open up the floor for questions.
What size telescope are you using, Tom?
I was using a 17.5-inch Dobsonian that my friend Jim Stevens had just finished, and so it was first light on the scope.
Wow, good question. You still use that now?
I haven't for a while. Jim actually moved quite a distance from me, so I haven't seen him for a while.
Were you looking for comets or anything at the time, or?
No, just observing deep sky objects. Yeah. I like galaxies and nebula and star clusters and things like that. And although they don't appear obviously as in the pictures that we see, there's still nebulas like Orion are a beautiful blue. And as I was speaking to Frank, through a binocular viewer, it actually forms a bowl, kind of a bowl shape, and you can walk yourself in around columns of gas and dust and swirls, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And so is the Veil Nebula, and I'm sure that many of you have experienced those things. And I really love to share the sky with people. Yeah.
We are humbled by your erudition, but I'm just wondering, it's a totally unrelated question really. As a scientist, do you believe that a deity is behind all this?
Actually, that's sometimes an awkward question, but yes, I do.
Right.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
There's I've researched that subject for over 10 years, and there are 332 parameter lists that I have that are required for life.
Yes.
Not just life as we know it, but any conceivable life form. And for all of those things to come together by sheer chance, I just don't think it's possible. Yes.
And can I ask, who decided to do the scope to M70? Was it you or your friend?
Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were kind of walking through the globular clusters there, but basically he walked up to the scope. He said, "Yep, that's M70." Over to the car, opened up the atlas, and starts going through the atlas. And actually, I was, if you want the truth, I was being kind of lazy and not dragging the scope because it didn't have a drive motor on it because it's a Dob. I just was, had been pulling it along, but I just kind of gave a pause to that and let M70 drift across. I normally look around the area anytime I look at something because I'll see a little double star or something else of interest in the field of view, and I kind of just check the whole area out. So, like I said, when M70 got about 3/4 of the way across, here's that little fuzzy dot. And I focused on it, and it stayed fuzzy, and I was like, gosh, that's really strange. I wonder if that's a really, really tiny little galaxy or something. And so I asked Jim, and he came over and took a look. No, I don't know what that is. And we went, of course, and looked in Little Turion's atlas, and nothing in that location. Well, it didn't go down deep enough in magnitude, really. So that's when we got out Uranometria, and there absolutely was nothing there in Uranometria. So, like I said, we began watching it, and an hour later decided, yeah, it was a comet. Of course, when you report it, you don't know whether it's new or not, and unless you keep up with the comet database, there could always be a discovery you don't know about. And like I said, it wasn't until I reported it. They were actually able to make their determination in less than 15 minutes that it was new when I talked to the Central Bureau. So it didn't take them very long to decide that it was a new comet. It's kind of comical because Brian Marsden said, nobody sends a telegram to report a comet. What's the internet for? Well, 95 miles out the desert, no modem, and with the name of Central Bureau for Astronomical Telegrams, I thought that was the proper procedure. So that's what I did. They all got a big chuckle out of it, and they said that I came within a few minutes of the window where they would have cut off the thing because the telegram was sitting on somebody's desk unopened. Oh. So.
Another quick question. Do you think it's more difficult for amateurs to discover objects like this now because of the likes of the sky surveys?
Yes, absolutely. However, it still can be done as long as you're within 30 degrees of the sun, because none of the instruments can look at the sun or look any closer than that to the sun. Hubble can't, it would destroy the detectors. So, unfortunately for us, seems that southern hemisphere observers have a better chance at it than we do. And of course, several discoveries have been made by Australian amateurs and so on. But it's still possible. Like I said, if you confine yourself to an area where those instruments and those sky surveys can't look, yeah, it's still possible. It's one of the few areas in science that amateurs can make significant contributions, just like you were talking, you imaged the impact on Jupiter. My goodness, you know, talk about egg on the face of professional astronomers. You know, you would think that somebody somewhere was watching that and would have picked up on it first.
Second person,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah, yeah, the second person.
Hey, Frank. Hey, Bopp. Hey, Frank.
Have you got your phone charged for tonight?
I do. And I also have the Central Bureau's address. And email address. Carry it with me at all times.
It was interesting to see the image of Saturn in front of the Cloud Nebula, because I remember someone at the time saying that as amateur astronomers we'd have an idea of what those Chinese observers would have seen, because when it was sitting directly over the supernova remnant, it was really evocative of the rise to prominence of the supernova. And I remember noticing it at the time.
Well, I can imagine. Here you have a supernova remnant that was visible during broad daylight for 20 days, 21 days, something like that. Oh my gosh, you know, wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, and
Of course, Hale-Bopp in 2214 BC was that way too. It was visible daylight.
it was so much closer to the Earth than perihelion.
Yes, if Hale-Bopp had come in December instead of in April, it would have, the head would have been 30 degrees wide at the horizon, and it would have been within 5 degrees of the horizon all the way across the sky, and it would have been as bright as the full moon. There wouldn't have been any night. You guys would have really been mad at me if the skies were clear. You wouldn't have been able to see anything else. I guess you would have got over it though.
Yeah.
From the morning of that call, your life must have changed beyond all recognition.
It is, you know, one of my favorite things is when I would get interviewed by the media, you know, they would ask me, I hate to say it, and I hope I don't offend anybody here in the audience, but most third graders in school have more intelligent questions than what I get from the media. And it's just absolutely amazing, the kinds of things that they ask. I had someone ask me how many galaxies there were in the solar system.
Oh, we told them 4.
And one of the funniest questions I ever got was aboard a cruise ship. A woman came up to me, and people joke around with me all the time, and I like it, and you know, there's a little back and forth and so on, and this woman came up to me, and I thought she was joking with me. She said, "Have we ever sent any manned missions to the sun?" And I popped right back, "Yeah, but we always go at night." And then I felt bad because I don't like to deliberately deceive anybody or anything like that. It was quite awful. And another funny incident that happened was I was lecturing on board a cruise ship, and a woman came up to me. We were in the Caribbean, and she said, "Dr. Bopp, I'd like to see the Southern Cross." And I said, "Well, it won't be up above the horizon far enough for about another hour and a half." And she mumbled something under her breath, you know, kind of like disgusted or something, and walked off, and I thought nothing more of it. Next morning, I got a knock on my cabin door, and they said, "Dr. Bopp, can you please come down to the office? You've had a formal complaint filed against you." And I thought, oh my gosh, you know, what's she going to say? I broke her or something? So I go down there, and you know, my heart's like in my throat because I didn't know what was going on. And I get in there, and they open up the complaint book, and they say, "Dr. Bopp wouldn't bring up the Southern Cross for me to see before I went to bed." Anyway, because of the cruise line policy, they had to file it because it was a complaint. So it's there for posterity and in the record that I wouldn't bring up the Southern Cross for that woman to see before I went to bed.
Fire, yeah.
What's that?
They fired you?
No, actually, I went on 9 cruises with that cruise company. They liked me quite
I
well.
think it was very selfish of you not to bring it up for.
Actually, I did take a few friends along. You weren't on the list. Anything else? Well, like I said, I have a couple different types of images for sale if anybody would be interested in making a purchase.
All right, thanks very much. Okay, we're going to do the price draw now.
I can't remember exactly what it was.